Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Continuing on with the Ling Wonton Fui Chinesium diesel engine project. I've been working the valve cover off camera. I think in a previous video I mentioned that I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to check oil pressure because this line that we repaired in a previous video connects to the valve cover, not the head. And I thought, well, I'd have to leave that disconnected to check oil pressure. Well, turns out I was wrong. No surprise there. This is a plunger arrangement, and that oil line I just showed you connects here. So, and I believe that's a return line back to the crankcase. Anyway, while you're cranking or running, oil delivers. There's a couple of ports down inside there, you can see. And some of that is delivered to the rockers and the valve stems. And some of it shows up here. This cap screws on there, and there was some kind of clear plastic bulb on the end of that. So you could see oil. Well, of course, that plastic bulb was long since destroyed, so I'm going to have to figure out something there. But this was all plugged up and rusted up, and I pretty much got that all clear now. But today, the main thing is we're finally going to dive into this fuel injection pump. Now, I was watching another YouTuber over in Ireland that has one of these. If I remember, I'll put a link in the description. And they got his running, and apparently this is the lift pump, and the main fuel injection pump is inside there. Of course, he didn't have his apart because his engine was like brand new. So, I'm talking too much. Let's dive into this thing. I got this thing rolled up to top dead center on a compression stroke. I pulled these side covers off here. I didn't see any spot where I could put a pin to lock the pump. You pull this off, all you can see is the rack in there. So I'm just winging it here. It's coming. And we got a gasket. And I may have broke it. Well, other than the broken gasket, this looks beautiful in here. These gears are perfect. This cam right here, obviously I'm not rolling the engine over now because that is going to stay in that position. This looks like some kind of a cone clutch affair here. It's got a bearing right there. They look good, but I'm not going to take that apart right now because that cone clutch looks like it drives these two mini rockers right here. And I believe that is part of the governor and throttle because it all connects to this external lever and spring, and you loosen that nut that's on the back side there and run this lever up and down, and that increases or decreases your throttle. It's also connected to this. This is the injector right here, the injection pump. Pretty simple affair. This is what's on the back side. This is the back side of that cover I pulled off. So obviously I'm leaving that in that position. And I'm treading in uncharted waters here. I got to pull this apart and clean it. But looking at it from this side, it looks good. So I'm thinking I may just pull this out right there and just hose it really good with some brake clean and just see if I can't clean out the guts without disassembling anything. Because the last thing I want to do is inadvertently throw this out of time. This shaft is part of the hand crank mechanism. It's keyed. This gear's beautiful. This end of this shaft slides right in there. And so when you're hand cranking this thing, that's how you crank the engine. This guy right here, I'm assuming is some kind of a sight glass. Probably maybe for checking oil. I don't know, because it's just open in here. Sorry, you guys can't see. Generally in here to the inside, this is a cast aluminum cover, by the way, really thick. And so I'm assuming that's going to have some oil in it. So maybe that's what that's for. Maybe checking oil flow. I don't know. So, and here, told you I found English writing in other parts earlier. Well, that's not Chinese. It's the letters LC. So, that kind of reinforces my theory about British involvement. Who knows? Okay, let's get to cleaning. Well, I went ahead and pulled that out of there, and I've got it here in the vise. I was getting a lot of brown, gooky type of old fuel coming out, and so I've got this filled up with brake clean and just letting it soak. I didn't pull any of this apart. I kept it all oriented the way it was. The back side of this thing is nice and clean. So this little rod right there sticking out the side engages with this shaft right here. You can see the slot in it. So I didn't change any of that orientation either. I'm really worried about getting this thing out of time. There's a big spring in there. I see circlips of some kind. So that thing does come apart. But unless I have a failure delivering fuel after I do this cleaning method, I'm going to leave it alone. Because if I screw it up, it's all over right there. Well, I let that injection pump soak overnight in brake clean, and I rinsed it out this morning with more brake clean. I got a lot of brown old fuel fluid out of it, and and I got clear fluid. And then, like a doofus, I knew as soon as I pulled the trigger I'd made a mistake. I put the nozzle in here from the air blower to blow out all the brake clean so I can get WD-40 in there. And as soon as I pull the trigger, the nozzle shot out of the end and landed in the gravel right in front of the door. Thank God I found it. So, yeah, when you're about to put air to something, block the end so you don't lose critical parts. At any rate, so yeah, I'm getting this back together now. And we'll move on to the next step. I'm trying to unstick the throttle / governor controls. I got this loose here. The top is loose here. We got steel shafts going through aluminum. We're still froze up down in here. I've been soaking this in Croil. I got rusty liquid coming up out of that aluminum boss there. So I'm just going to keep working this back and forth. And right now it's in the shut-off position. When it's in the wide open throttle position. If I push this lever down, it's supposed to pull this lever that way, of course, move the shaft accordingly, and that's the fuel shut-off position. She's stuck wide open right now. Yeah. Wouldn't that be something? First start and have a runaway? That could get ugly. Well, while all that throttle linkage and governor stuff is soaking, I'm going to go ahead and clean up this clutch assembly for the governor here a little bit. These bearings, they look good. There's just a little surface goo on them, so I'll get those into the parts washer. Races are in the same situation. But behind this, we've got a bunch of steel ball bearings. They have a bunch of surface rust and goo. Hopefully they're not pitted, but I mean, it is what it is. They're going back in with a little lubrication as is, probably a little super lube. But that's as far as I'm tearing this down. I'm not taking anything else apart. Everything looks good. I don't have any assembly lube, like 105, Loctite 105 assembly lube. So I'm just going to use a little super lube on certain things, just until oil pressure comes up. And I've got some Forma gasket. I'm going to reuse this old gasket and then just kind of glue it where it broke and call it good enough. What I thought was rust turned out to be just dried oil. Brown, looked like rust, but it cleaned right up in the parts washer. So I'm going to get some super lube on those, get them back in their appropriate holes on that gear there, and then put that clutch hub back on there. Well, I'll see if I can do this without dropping any of these balls. Get this cover here started. Good. Got lucky there. Okay, time to clean up this gasket and then go check on the shaft in the cover. Well, as it turns out, that wasn't what was stuck at all. That all moves freely, albeit it did need a little lube. What was stuck, I had to pull that back out. This is what's stuck. I've been working that little shaft back and forth with a brass punch and a hammer, and I got it moving. I've been soaking the heck out of it with Aerocroil, and it's getting looser by the minute. So I'm just going to keep working that back and forth, and then once it's, I think, loose enough that I can work it with the handle on that cover over there, then it'll be safe to put back together. But who knows, we may still wind up with a runaway. We'll see. Well, this is still a little bit on the stiff side, but it's now moving. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep, sorry, my big fat hand's in the way. I'm just going to keep working this back and forth and lubing it. And then once it moves easily, because this is the throttle control out here. Once it moves easily with this, without me having to manipulate it from the inside, I know I'll have it. So, more progress. Well, that side cover is now reinstalled. The injection pump loosened up really good, and I can now, that rack in there moves with the throttle lever just fine. So, yeah, I guess, other than cleaning up some fuel lines in the fuel filter housing, we're putting this thing back together. Well, I said I wasn't going to spend any money on this engine. Well, I did have to break down and spend $1.47 for that pipe plug. That's the bottom drain for the hopper, cooling water hopper. And I had every size in my Horde except 1/2 inch. I had 1/4, 3/8, 3/4, 1 inch, but no 1/2 inch. So I splurged and spent $1.47. I also bought 1/2 inch NPT pipe tap to chase the threads in that hole. That was $17, but I don't count that against the cost of this engine because I will use that pipe tap on all kinds of other stuff, including like the pump jack trailer. So that's just a tool I added to the Horde. So not directly related to this thing. So yeah, also, I'm gonna have to spring for a fuel filter. I've got a bunch of Yanmar filters in the Horde from when I was trying to revive that little Yanmar engine. However, all those filters are way too small. They don't fit around the stud of that filter housing. Plus, they're closed on one end, so they won't work. So I am going to have to spring for that. But as close as we are to firing this thing up, hey, at this point, a few bucks for a fuel filter ain't going to kill me. Well, there's always something that gets in the way of the fun. Nancy and I were out estate sailing, and I heard a strangely familiar sound coming from the left rear. Yep. We are metal to metal on the pads, and the piston in the caliper is leaking. So this thing's getting all new rear brakes on it. So that's going to be a bit of a postponement on the Ling diesel. But, you know, a guy's got to do what a guy's got to do. Well, as you have probably gathered by now, it's been a while. See, the previous clip, I think I was talking about having to do rear brakes on Nancy's Subaru. Then I couldn't pass up a deal on free goat manure, so I had to build a shelter for that to keep the javelina out of it. And then after that was a tractor show, and in the middle of all of that, we've got lawn and garden issues. Chainsaw's down, and my little combi tool power unit is down, and so and I need them for chores around here. If you guys don't care anything about that stuff, we're getting back on this thing. I just finished grinding up a little tool here to use because we're going to make something here. The filter screen assembly for the oil pickup was completely shot. So I am going to attempt to make this little thimble-like oil pickup with a dimple die and this tool and some shiny sheet metal that I just finished grinding up. For the screen, I've got this stuff. It's got a galvanized coating on it. The mesh is a little coarser than what was originally in there, but I mean, this is just kind of for catching big chunks anyway. And too fine a mesh, you won't get the proper oil flow. So anyway, I'm taking the Shade Tree Fix-It Man's advice. I picked up this MAP gas bottle and I attached it to my propane torch head. I watched George demonstrate that on his channel and it worked just fine. So I'm going to use that to heat this metal so I can shape it in this dimple die, and hopefully we'll come up with something like that. Let's see what happens. I'll be channeling my inner Arco, Minnesota Outlaw Customs, Outlaw Edge on YouTube. One hammer hit too many. One more time after she started to cool down and I cracked it. Well, I still got plenty of material here. Let's try it again. Well, this is a fail. I'm taking this metal up to red hot and then gingerly few taps and then red hot again and more taps. But I think this metal is just thick enough. I can't get enough stretch out of it and then end up punching through it. So I gotta see if I got some thinner metal around here. Maybe I can make that work. Let's see what happens. I'm gonna try one more thing before I give up here. A gas axe. I'm getting metal hot, but I don't think I'm getting the outer edges hot enough to well, she cools off fast. Not getting the outer edges hot enough to stretch quick enough. Getting those outer edges hot enough, I think she'll maybe stretch enough. By golly, I think I've got it. I just wasn't getting it hot enough, and especially along the outer perimeter, so the metal was soft enough that it could pull in. I do have quite a tuck here, but I've got to reheat and flatten out. I'll do that off camera. But I think I got a winner here. Well, I got that all flattened out. Now I'm going to cut it out in the shape of the other existing thimble, and then see if I can't cut the screen and gingerly tack weld it, or maybe braze it with the bronze brazing rod. I don't know yet. But anyway, yeah, that turned out. 4th try, but it worked. It ain't perfect, but it's good enough for who it's for. I think if my tool was a little larger in diameter, I could have more closely replicated the original, but that's going to be good enough. So I'm going to cut some screen and see if I can set the MIG very lightly to tack screen onto that new thimble. That's a bit Gorilla Globbed, but it's solid. It's not going to go anywhere. So, success. Okay, we got one finished oil pickup screen. Looks hideous, but it's solid. It ain't going nowhere. So we'll get this installed in the engine and then put the oil pan on. The old pipe anvil isn't just for sheet metal. Works pretty good on Velcro Caro Pack gasket material too. Much better. That gasket material, the Velcro gasket material, it's not something I purchased for this project. It's stuff I had on hand. I have gasket material everywhere hiding in this shop. I've got a main box with most of it in there, the smaller stuff. But anyway, the gaskets are installed on the valve cover and the oil pan. So let's get these back on the engine. Perfect. If you recall a few videos back, this is the oil line that we repaired, braze repaired, and then I've had to kind of manipulate it a little bit since we had to cut some length out of it to affect that braze repair and rebend this by hand so this banjo fitting would line up where it bolt or screws into the block there. So I'm going to I dipped into my Harbor Freight consumables. I keep their, their woodruff keys and copper washers and other consumable hardware. I have always got that stuff on hand. So as I've been starting to put this back together, I've been putting the new hardware, new copper washers on all of these banjo fittings for fuel and oil. There's kind of a sequence in how all this goes back together. I got to get this oil line reinstalled. I had to tighten it up back here. Now I'm tightening up here. Now I can put the flywheel back on, and before I get the oil pan put on. And if you recall a few videos back, the sequence, I had to take this apart. And if you don't remember, go back and watch it again, or if you don't care, there's no worries there either. Sometimes a guy has to admit to himself that he might be just getting a little too old for some of this stuff. The heavy stuff, anyway. Come on. Chinese crescent wrench on a Chinese engine should work, you'd think. Well, the flywheel's back on, cinched down, and the fold over lock is up against the nut so it can't back off. So I'm going to jack this thing back up in the air now, and we'll get the oil pan. Well, actually, we'll put the pickup tube on that. Forgot to do that earlier. And then we'll get the oil pan on also. The bottom of the pan to the gasket mating surface is 3 11/16 inches. So I want to set the bottom edge of this oil pickup assembly about 1/8 of an inch above that, just off the floor of the pan, and so it'll be fully submerged yet give clearance to the pan. Boy, 3 9/16 on the money. How did I get so lucky? I stuck the pan up there too, just to make sure it didn't hit. Because if it did, you'd hear a god-awful rattle from the bottom end, and you were thinking, what did I do to destroy this engine? All right, that's tight. Double check that. Whoa, Nelly. Yep, we're good. Okay, time for the oil pan. These little doohickeys right here are called snap-ups. I've known about them since the early 90s. They're kind of a third hand. You can get them at automotive suppliers everywhere. And basically, they hold your the oil pan in place while you're getting your nuts and bolts ready. And I got to figure out where all of these brackets go. So anyway, those snap-ups, they hold everything in place so you can keep your fingers busy doing stuff with the nuts and bolts instead of fighting an oil pan, you know, trying to figure out how to align holes and where everything goes. They're pretty effective. I mean, there's still a little bit of jicky-jacking around you got to do, but for the most part, they're a pretty handy little gadget to have around. That's what they look like. And a little spring flange on there, once you push the pan over that, snaps out, holds the pan up. Then you can start getting your bolts all up there. When you're a one-man band like me, you need all the advantages you can get. Come on now. So I got to put oil in this thing and then crank it over and see if I build oil pressure. I don't want to use the starter for that because I also, once I get a tank on here, I got to check for fuel, bleed the fuel system too. And I don't want to run that starter for that because you recall in earlier videos, I had a heck of a time with this starter and bringing it back. And so I only want to use it for actually starting the engine. So I'm going to see if I can modify this Yanmar crank to adapt to the crank opening on this Ling, so I can turn this thing over by hand. So let's give some fabricating a chance here. Well, once again, the Horde produced what I needed. Get this big old bolt here. It's a little loose in there, but I'll cross drill it and put a pin in there, probably made out of another bolt. And it looks like, sorry about that crappy camera work here. It looks like it's gonna fit the handle too. So I'll cut that off, weld it up, and see if we can make a crank handle out of it. Fabricating at its finest. Let's get this over on the engine there and see if it's even going to work. Come on, roll over. There we go. That's it, that's gonna work. Man, even with the compression release on, cranking this over, boy, man, that's pretty rough. Oh, as soon as she hits compression, this old man ain't got enough. I hope this starter holds out. This is about the dinkiest funnel opening for putting in oil. It's going to take forever. Hey, I splurged. I bought the cheapest heavy-duty diesel conventional oil I could get at Cal Ranch. This engine's starting to give me hope, so I'm putting a slight amount of money into it. This is going to take forever to fill. Well, I'm a tad over full on the dipstick, which is fine, because there's oil galleries in this thing that need to fill up. So I got the compression release engaged. I'm just going to hand crank this thing over and see if we can build any kind of oil pressure. Oh, there we go. So as I first started cranking this thing, I was hearing a suction sound, and I didn't know where it was coming from. And then I zeroed it in on this little fitting here, this return, that suction from the pump. So I reconnected this line back up to the valve cover and just started cranking, and lo and behold, we started getting oil circulation through here. So that's a good thing. And I believe this is a crankcase vent here. So the oil pump is working. I'm going to crank it over by hand for a little while longer just to, ensure that I've got full circulation. Then I'll recheck the oil and top it off if I need to. And then I'm going to take some Tygon tubing and see if I can build some kind of a little sight glass here and get that problem resolved. Then we'll move on to fuel. It pays to have plenty of estate sale, auction, and garage sale stock in the hoard, because you never know when you're going to need it. Redneck engineering at its finest. All of that came out of what I had in stock. I got a pile of brass fittings. And I tell you what, I use the heck out of it for dumb stuff like this. This is the fuel filter out of the Ling, and it was plug solid. So I soaked it in the parts washer for several days. And then took some brake clean and started to rinse it out. And it started to disintegrate. So that is shot, worthless, useless. It'll just plug up the whole fuel system if I even try it. So I took it yesterday into town and to the various auto parts places available to us to see if anybody could match that, because there isn't a marking 1 on it anywhere. And I struck out. Nobody, I mean, those guys, they got into it. They even started looking up Ling, and nothing available. So I've got a plan B in mind. My plan all along was to pull the fuel tank off this old roasted Yanmar engine and see if I could adapt it to the Ling. And I had forgotten that it has a filter housing here and a fuel shutoff valve here. I got plenty of filters that fit this because I got those when I was trying to resurrect this engine. Anyway, I think I might be able to adapt that fuel filter housing and fuel filter to the Ling, along with trying to figure out a way to mount this. Sorry about the sun glare. Mount that tank. So I'm going to grab some wrenches and pull all of this off of here. I'm going to do that off camera and bring you back when I get ready to see if we can get it on the wonton Fooey engine in the shop. I have temporarily reassembled the existing fuel system so I can keep my brain wrapped around the orientation. And so now I'm going to go bring the Yanmar tank in here and see if I can adapt it. I may, if I can, have that existing fuel filter with the Yanmar tank. I leave it up here and then just route the fuel line down to this banjo fitting that feeds this filter housing. And instead of having a filter in there, just use that as a reservoir, an auxiliary fuel reservoir, and control the filtering and the fuel shutoff with the tank up here. So anyway, let me get that going. I think this is going to be pretty straightforward. I just need to cut a piece of angle iron and attach it to a couple of these bolts here for this top cover, and then attach the tank to that. I'll have to do the same on the front side with a piece of rubber on the top flange of the angle iron, you know, to support the front of the tank there. Mounting the filter may be a little problematic. The way I've got it oriented right now, the crank handle clears, but I've got to come back and that way. So I'm going to cut some angle and play with this for a while and show you what I come up with. Well, that turned out to be a little more fabricating than I originally anticipated, but the end result is satisfactory. I forgot the position of that bolt. The bolt head would be too close to the flange of the angle iron, so I just clamped a copper strip to that and plug welded it up. So it will be less -1 bolt in the center, but that's okay. This bracket will provide nice rigid support. So I got to duplicate that on the other side, but before I get too carried away with that, I got to clamp this tank onto this and see if the position's going to work. I had to modify my plan slightly. I had to come back and up a little higher because I had too much interference with just the single angle flange. I couldn't bolt directly into that. There's too much interference that low. So I brought another piece of angle on there, and that's going to work out. So now I'm going to go ahead and build a front mount and get the tank bolted on here, and then I'll figure out how to secure that filter housing. There you have it. That turned out halfway decent. Well anchored. I was able to utilize this top bolt in that cover. Sorry about the crappy camera work right there. I rotated this filter housing. Zoom you out. This is terrible. Rotated this filter housing 90 degrees. Bolted it there. Reran a couple of lines. Added a couple of clamps. And so that filter is mounted. You turn that fuel valve on, and it's going to run through that filter and then migrate down here. I had to put a splice in there. I didn't have enough hose in one length. And that comes down to this filter housing, which has no filter in it. Don't need it because it's right there. And this will act as a reservoir. So that feeds the injection pump, which feeds the injector. And then there's a return line. Normally those go to the tank. This one goes back to this filter housing. I've got the filter or the return line for this tank blocked. Oh yeah, that's totally redneck right there, a little redneckery. But this tank is now solid. So, where are we at? I've got a bolt on the intake. I've got a bolt on the exhaust. I'll do that off camera because they're just straight, pretty much straight pipes and just 2 bolts each. I'll get those on there. I'm going to turn the fuel valve on, and I got to bleed the system. I don't know if I'm going to film any of that or not. I mean, you watch me bring oil pressure up to speed. It's the same process, just cracking fittings. I might film some of it. And then there's only one thing left before we try to start it. We got to address the water hopper. If I didn't know better, I'd say I have worked on this before. I mean, it looks like the kind of Gorilla Glob welding I would do. You never know when that might come in handy someday. Well, let's crack that fuel valve open. I'm going to have to crack a lot of fittings open and just let some air purge by gravity at first. And then I'll start cranking the engine over by hand and just, see if I can purge air out of the system. And then I guess we try to start this thing. Well, we got fuel at the injector. That's the last step. I don't have any leaks anywhere else. I've got some starting fluid there to help us get going. And if things go bad, I'll turn off the fuel valve, take that rag, stuff it into the intake, and if that's not successful, we'll go with the CO2. Iron hole. Oh, come on. Starter don't want to engage. Well, we got a little smoke out of the exhaust. Well, I just checked the battery with the voltmeter, and it's under 12 volts, so it don't quite have enough oomph to crank this thing over at a sufficient speed. So I'm going to put that on the charger overnight, and we'll take a crack at this again tomorrow morning. Now I'm getting serious. I'm going to just start this thing right off the ram. Camera's rolling. So,
we got diesel in it, everything's ready.
Got diesel
all
in it.
Primed up.
She's primed. I got water in the hopper. The Lone Wolf 1000.
Oh yeah, don't take much.
I made that. You can try it if you want. Yeah, it is bigger.
Alright, got it.
Here we go. Look at that. We got a runner. my cheesy redneck gas tank mount. Flywheel is straight and true. Well, my fuel tank mount is insufficient. I'll have to rework that a little bit. But you know what? That exhaust sound sounds strangely familiar to me. Sorry, I couldn't help it. I had to insert that clip of that Alice Chalmers keeping time for that band. And that Wu Ling sounds amazingly like it. Maybe I can farm it out to local musicians, make a little money off of it. I want to say a special thanks to my pals, Greg and Lance, for coming over and helping me get this thing going. Greg's the one that gave me the Lone Wolf 1000 for the starter, and then He-Man Lance is the one that just cranked her over by hand, and we got her running. And yeah, unfortunately, the starter is just too weak. Even with a direct jump off the truck, it just didn't have it. It's worn out. So Greg has offered to take it back to his place and chuck it on the lathe and true it up, clean it up, and maybe new brushes and all that kind of stuff. We'll see. But I know it'll start by hand crank, so I'm just going to have to man up a little bit and go that route. First time out of the gate, and the fuel injection system worked great. Throttle response worked. The fuel shutoff worked. And so all of that's functional. There's quite a bit of noise coming out of that side cover. There's straight cut gears in there. And I think what I'm going to do is pop that cover back off and put a generous coating of extreme pressure molybdenum grease on there and lube that up. That one little line in the top of the cover that drips oil in there, I don't think that's enough. So anyway, I'll see if I can quiet it down that way. But we got a runner. Success. Thank you all for hanging with me on this 7-part series, getting this goofy Chinese boat anchor running. But it runs good. Not once it got up and going good. No excessive smoke or anything like that. And it sounds really good. So, yeah. With that, I'm going to say thanks for watching, everybody, and sticking with me on this series. Thanks to all the new subscribers that have joined us. Thanks to all the existing subscribers that have stuck around. And Farm All H time. Got to get geared up for that. So I'm going to say bye for now. And on the next video, we'll just see what kind of trouble we can get into. We'll see you later. Have a good day.